I love the music. So this is one of the most entertaining things I've been involved in quite some time. So hats off to you, man.
Oh, that's good. I think got to have fun. We got to have fun
Yeah,
with this.
absolutely. All right. Yeah, so today I'm going to focus on showing you four use cases. We're going to get right down to business. My background, just to give you my perspective of CSI, they acquired my company a few years ago. So I was part of the CSI family, and then recently, through the uh, through the excitement of AI over the last few years, which I've been involved in for almost 8 years, CSI decided to take a bet on me, and they invested in our company, raia. So we are still part of the CSI family, but we're part of the venture side. So we're excited to show you kind of what we've been working on, and more importantly, how you can actually use it inside of your business. Our big pitch is we make AI that works for you. Paul did an excellent job kind of showcasing the other use cases of AI. And so I'm sure many of you are sitting there, like in most businesses when we talk to, and kind of confused because there's so much going on in the AI space. It's not too dissimilar to when the internet started, right? Everybody was .com this, website that, and we're kind of going through that same revolution today. But I always like to think of AI in three categories. It just helps me kind of understand when you're looking at something, what is it really supposed to do? How's it supposed to help you in your day to day? And Paul just did an excellent job kind of talking mostly about AI tools and AI add-ons, which is a completely separate piece. And what we really do at raia is we focus on AI agents. And so to kind of level set this for everyone, if you're working on a tool like Microsoft Outlook or Excel or anything that you've already used in your past, like Photoshop, typically most of those apps are adding on AI to help use that app more, in an easier fashion. Maybe it's helping you kind of shortcut some things, or even adding a little bit of functionality that makes it even cooler. And then AI tools are things that are very specific for the AI things, like Scott has clearly shown. Making music is an example of what he showed, or making that Hey Jin video earlier of the evil twin of Scott. So really what we're going to focus on is how do you put this to work inside of your business. And so we're going to demonstrate two of our core products that are part of our ecosystem. raia Chat, which is really the external facing part of our AI agent. This is where your customers, your vendors, your prospects can engage with your AI agent. And the right side, the co-pilot, is really for your internal team or your employees engaging with that same AI agent or any other AI agent that you deploy on our platform. And so I'm going to show you four use cases on how these kind of interexchange. And I think the most important kind of takeaway when you're talking about an AI agent is that it's really what it is. It's a go-between. So unlike kind of what you saw today, which is tools that are more, hey, I'm using this for my own personal use. AI agents are really great at being a go between you and another party, or you and another application. And of course, behind the scenes is our core Bedrock product, which is our Launchpad. And what we've built with Launchpad, and this is what we've been working on for years, is making AI agents easy for anybody to deploy. So even somebody like Scott
Like
to
Scott, exactly right, Rich.
it
That
took
is a
every
hundred percent.
it took every
No,
ounce of
no,
I feel horrible for saying, but
no. It's
I
a
had to
hundred
join it.
percent
I
true.
had to join it
If
on the
I,
group.
Rich, if I can do it,
Yeah.
anybody can do it. Let's
All
call
right. All right.
a spade
Enough
here. That is a
enough of
hundred
Scott
percent correct.
bashing. So this launch pad is, it doesn't require code. You kind of go in, you're given instructions, and you say, I want you to perform this task, and I want you to do it in this way. And of course, you can connect it with your existing systems if that's required. But we're going to talk about that in a minute when we get to the use cases. So from first principles, we always started from this perspective. AI is meant to kind of permeate through your organization, and in some cases in very small ways, and in some cases in a very big way. And we're going to talk about both those in our use cases. So this really applies to anybody, whatever your role is within your company, whether you're on the operations side, marketing. AI is going to have an impact in some form or fashion, and it's going to permeate into the applications that you're using today. Or hopefully, at some point, you might be able to deploy an AI agent that actually automates tasks that can save you time and money. And so let's go ahead and get off kickstart with the first AI agent that we've deployed. And now these are real AI agents that we've deployed within the Constellation family. So these aren't just courteous demos. These are actually ones that have been deployed and working currently. So let me give you kind of before I go into the video, let me kind of give you an overlay of what this is. So when you think of raia or you think of an AI agent, it's really a go-between, right? It's a go-between a person and another person, or a person and an app, or even in some cases with autonomous agents, it can be between an app and an app. It could be done behind the scenes. But in this case study, we started with, this is a CSI company in the dealer group called Ideal, and they have existing support system. They use team support. They have existing videos, hundreds of them that are on this site called Wistia, and they have a ton of websites and a bunch of Excel spreadsheets. They've got all this data, which we'll just call their knowledge base, in all these third-party systems. So step one in deploying this solution is we put it all together and we trained an AI agent that understood this and could answer questions around it and could really have that conversation with anybody, whether it be for an internal support team that might be struggling and have a question and ask the AI agent to help them with a support ticket, or putting that out directly to the customer to be able to engage, whether it be through SMS, through email, or even live chat on their website. So let's go ahead and I'll walk you through this demo. So we're starting off with the perspective of I'm the support agent right now, and I've logged on to Rhea Copilot. And so I might get a ticket in from customer, and I just don't know the answer. So in this case, the customer is asking me, hey, I've got a duplicate entry, of the same supplier. How do I handle it? So what the AI is doing, because it's been trained on all of this knowledge base, it's giving back a very clear instructional document or answer about how to go through and do it, and also gives you a link back to the source. So this allows it makes it easier for the support person. They can just cut and paste that and put it into an email or get back and answer that question very easily. It also allows us to train the AI. And this is so important. And I'm going to be talking about this throughout the presentation. It is so important to have the person, the expert, the human, training the AI and saying, hey, that was actually a good answer. And when it's a bad answer, it can actually change that answer and say, hey, that was not really good. This is probably the most important component of Rhea and where we really started, which was how do we make it where the AI, which gets a lot of things wrong, as Paul mentioned earlier, smarter and better? Well, you get the human to manage it, to train it. Now, this perspective is actually the customer's perspective. I'm the customer, and I'm actually going directly to the customer portal of Ideal, and I'm asking the same question. So you'll see, obviously, the expected behaviors, I'm going to get the same answer. It's obviously in a different form factor. This is a live chat. It might have a different, it has limited capabilities. Obviously, we're not asking the customer to train the AI, but they have a very nice, familiar live chat interface. And then they can also continue to ask questions. So I'm just going to show you and demonstrate how they could go through a series of questions and get answers. Because what we're going to do is we're going to toggle back to the support agent, and we're going to take a completely different view. So earlier we saw the support agent using it for their own personal use, asking the AI, hey, answer this question for me. Now, as we toggle back over, we're going to show you how the support agent can actually oversee and look at the conversation that this customer had directly with the AI. And so, we call this admin mode, but essentially it's now I'm managing as the support agent the AI and the conversation it has with customers. And we call this human in the loop. And this is something that you want to definitely earmark in your, because human in the loop is another very critical component of our platform, and also very critical when you're actually deploying this within your business, because you want to have somebody who's monitoring and managing this. So now what I did as the AI or as the support agent is I logged into the AI, and now I'm actually viewing the conversation it had with the customer. And in this case, I looked at the answer and I said, you know what? Actually, this answer is not accurate. There's a few steps that we no longer have to do. So I gave it a thumbs down, make it super easy for the AI, for the support agent to monitor the AI and also correct it. And I simply just cut and paste it, and I took out the two steps that are no longer relevant. And what this is called in the technical world is human feedback. And this is how AI goes from 85, 90% accurate to 99% accurate. And that's ultimately the last mile if anybody has ever used AI, and super critical to achieve. So that's case study one. And that just showed you again how Rhea can be a go-between, but also a very great resource for two very critical roles, right? Customers who need instant support 24/7, and of course the customer support people themselves who may not be familiar on how to answer something can always lean on the AI to get that answer out quicker. So let's talk about the second use case, sales. Let's drive some revenue. So when we're talking about driving revenue, it's actually very similar to what we just discussed. Support, sales, it's still using the same basic architecture. Rhea is acting as a go-between. But in this case, what makes it very unique is, as the prior use case was the human actually engaging with the AI and asking it to help it. In this case with sales, as we all know, it's more outbound. So in this AI agent, It's been trained to do outreach. So it's going to actually send a text message to start the conversation with a prospect who signed up on our website, go through a conversation of qualifying that prospect, and then summarizing that and giving it back to the sales agent. And it could pump that right into a Salesforce or into a HubSpot or into a CRM and go into your normal flow of business. But it could also text the sales representative, or if the sales representative wants to log into Copilot, even through a mobile device, they can also act as a human in the loop. So if they want to take over that conversation because it's a hot lead, they can certainly do that. Or they could just go and use their existing systems and never even know that this AI exists. And this is one of the beautiful things I think about raia and how we kind of approached it, is that we understand businesses already have systems. Nobody wants to log on to another application. And in an ideal world, AI lives in the background and performs tasks that saves everybody time and money. But the reality is that you still want to have some visibility, and there are use cases that do benefit from that. So let's go ahead and get started with the sales presentation. So on the right side, all you're really seeing is a mobile phone. So the AI just texted me. So I'm acting as the customer in this case. So I just got I got a text from the AI because I filled out a form on a website looking for more information. And so now I'm typing as a customer. Yeah, I'm thinking, just as if this was a human texting me. And what's beautiful about this is if you have 100 leads, 1,000 leads, or 5,000 leads, this AI can scale and service all of those leads, qualify them. It can be trained and instructed to ask certain questions and guide that prospect down the path until it's ready or until they're qualified to talk to a sales rep. And in fact, inside of this AI agent, you can also put in things like look for sentiment, score this conversation from 1 to 10, 10 being likely to actually want to see a demo, 1 being not interested at all. And you can put those kind of cadences and instructions baked into the AI, just like as if you were to train a BDR or an inside sales rep that you just hired. It's no different. But again, I want to emphasize this is really empowering the sales rep to do more with their time, to focus on qualified leads and to drive more revenue. This is about 10xing your employees. This is not about replacement. This is about augmentation and empowering an AI to do some of the tasks that you want to be done at scale. And so in this case, also, I'm showcasing that the AI agent is not restricted to a live chat experience or what we consider a chat GPT experience. This is being done over SMS. And it could also be done in a very similar fashion over email. And there's no additional work there. Once you train the AI, it can talk through SMS, it can talk through email. It's already pre-given all these things. Now what I'm doing is I'm toggling over as the actual sales rep if they wanted to, and they can actually see the conversation. Now, of course, in most use cases, I've actually taken this conversation and I put it into the notes, into the CRM. So that way, if they're logging onto the CRM, they would see the same thing. But let's just say the sales rep wanted to also get involved and be a human in the loop and say, you know what, I want to change this answer. I want to tell the AI, hey, next time, answer it differently. That link is no longer valid. Or if they ask the question about this feature, actually answer it a little bit differently. So again, you actually have your experts, the people that are actually doing the job, training the AI at scale, which is only going to get that reliability that you require in order for you to scale. So the third component is operations. And so in this case, we're taking a use case which was actually inspired by Scott. And so Scott, as a knowledge worker and as somebody who's managing, many, many different people that ask very, very difficult questions on a daily basis, wants to make sure that he services his constituents and his team. But at the same time, that's why we have an intranet. So imagine AI kind of being the new internet instead of having to kind of navigate through 60 PDFs, 30 Excel spreadsheets to the point where you're frustrated and you end up basically interrupting Scott while he's making music using AI, which it seems like this full-time job.
Exactly.
Um, now you can actually go and talk to the AI and say, and ask it the question about a financial policy, or imagine this in HR or in training or in policies around IT. I mean, this is really kind of your knowledge worker at scale. So in this case, I'm showing two scenarios. I spun up an AI agent, which I'm now interfacing through our Copilot. And I've trained this to understand Constellation software. So for me to understand the businesses that are within Constellation software. So in this case, I'm going to use this as a way to find somebody within Constellation software that I want to connect with. So I ask it if for Cindy Bell's email. Now, what I want to showcase here is this AI has not been trained on Cindy Bell or her email yet. So what I'm showcasing here is how I, as a user, as a business user, can easily upload a document and say, oh, you know what? I totally forgot. I didn't train you on this. Let me upload you the list of people that attended today's webinar. And then now I'm going to ask you questions and get more information. So this is just showing you how a user can train their own personal assistant. This is an AI agent that is specifically for my use, not shared with anybody else, but it's trained on data that's specific to CSI. So unlike ChatGPT or some of these other tools that Paul kind of showed us, those are trained on the general internet, but not, they have no idea of what is in your world inside of the firewall at CSI. So what you're seeing here is now that I've trained it, it actually gave me Cindy's email. And then it's asking me, do you want me to add this to a permanent training? So do you want to reference this document beyond this chat? Do you want to reference this next Tuesday or Tuesdays after that? Or is this just now? And so I said, yes, I want you to remember this because I want to reflect on this. And then I asked a very AI question. Is there a Michelle that works at Obix? Now, this is a very difficult query for any database to come back with, but AI is does such a great job of contextual search. It easily found that there was a Michelle Bosher at Obix and gave me the title. And then I asked what her LinkedIn is. Of course, I've trained the AI to understand all this. Now, whether it got this information from that PDF I uploaded, or from a CRM that I hooked into, or from a spreadsheet that I have inside of my Teams, whatever we are looking to train this AI on, you can train it, and it can be your own personal assistant. And this is what makes it very special. I always think of ChatGPT as kind of the entry point that everybody found AI to be this fascinating place. But where it actually helps us in our day-to-day work is where we can actually use it for our own personal use case behind a security that we trust. So everything you're seeing here is trained on the OpenAI enterprise, the same engine that drives ChatGPT, but it's secure. It's not being shared with the general public. It's not being trained on for the general ChatGPT. This is all internal. And so now what I did is I showed you how I easily toggled over to a completely different agent. So now we're getting into the conversation about how AI is not just one agent. It's literally going to be hundreds of agents within Constellation, maybe thousands, individual agents that you individually deploy, or ones that we've denoted. And like in this case, Scott has built out this ACC AI to deploy out to 60, 70, 80 comptrollers or financial analysts or whoever might need to use this, that can ask questions about CSI's financial policies. And Scott, as the overseer of this AI, can continually update it and know with confidence that anybody who asks a question is going to get a relatively good answer because it's been trained on. And of course, Scott can also dial in the human on the loop and change any answers by giving it a thumbs up or commenting and so forth. So again, another way to use AI, either for personal use or create an agent, train it on a specific thing, and then share it with your colleagues. Maybe you only want to share it with 3 of your team members. You don't have to share it with everybody. And this is the nuance that's very important when you're starting to talk about AI being used in the corporate scenario. And then final demo that I want to showcase is more on the creative side. So AI, especially generative AI, does two things very, very well: conversation and creativity, right? And I've kind of really focused on conversation for those 3 use cases. We trained an AI on a variety of different things, and it had conversations with people, different user roles. In this case, I'm coming in as the marketing person, and I want to generate content. And we saw a lot of great demos that Paul outlined, and obviously still getting over what Scott did. But creativity is a great way that generative AI can play a role. Now, if I'm on the marketing side, what am I trying to do? I'm actually more interested in building out articles or blogs, or I want to build out a newsletter, right? Not too dissimilar to how you built songs or everything else you've seen today. So in this use case, I spun up an agent, right? And this could be shared again with the marketing team, or it could be my own agent. But I've trained it to understand my voice, my cadence, and what I want to do. And I can just simply talk to it as if it was a human. Hey, write me a blog, give me 10 reasons why AI platform, blah, blah, blah. And it has a conversation just as if I was on a conference call with my marketing team about writing up some blogs. And so it comes back and asks me a couple questions. It wants to get me some context, and I give it a little bit more of an answer. And again, once I'm done, I say, all right, you have enough to go to work, go to work. Now, this could also be very easily automated. You could easily tell the AI on a daily basis, write me a blog. Here are the keyword phrases. Here are the topics. Use these RSS feeds as sources to inspire you. And of course, all this can be automated. In fact, almost everything that I showed today could be completely automated and just on exception, on the edge cases, a human has to get involved. But human in the loop is always a practical way to start, because what it allows you to do is understand what's capable of, to refine it, to give it feedback. And just like anything else, I can give it feedback. I can say, hey, I didn't like that answer. Next time, answer in a different manner. But once I'm done, you'll see here it says, hey, no problem. Give me a few minutes. I'll go write the blog for you. So, unlike the first three use cases, which was very real time, this is another a great example of how AI can just go to work, right? So, this is where you give it instructions. And of course, it's going to take time. It's got to go write the blog, it's got to go generate an image, then it's got to upload it to the website. And really, the end game here, the endpoint here is I'm actually going to toggle over. We actually use Webflow for our website, but you could use WordPress, you could use any content management system. And I'm going to show you that there, lo and behold, it generated the website or the blog for me. It automatically, because it's integrated, which is another key component of raia, is integration into your existing third-party apps, just like I showed earlier with CRM systems and the support systems. It uploaded the blog in here as a draft. So I'm, again, human in the loop. I'm kind of looking at what it did, and I said, you know what, this looks good. And I move on. Or I could change it, or I can edit it. And then I could even toggle back and give it feedback. Hey, that last blog you wrote, it didn't pass the mustard, make it longer, or make it more readable, whatever it might be. And of course, the ultimate goal here is it publishes the blog, on the website. So I think when you look at AI and AI agents, what we typically present to companies and kind of talk through is you want to outline what use cases can you see conversation and creativity playing a role, right? Where can you see gaps in your business where either you're understaffed, you don't have the capacity, or you're looking to reduce cost, or you're trying to find ways to automate things that you in your mind go, yeah, I'm sure AI could probably do at least a piece of that task or that role. But more importantly, another way to look at it, which is kind of what obviously our vision is that empowering your employees to have access to a tool that is simple to use, that is scalable, that can be used, like I showed today, four different use cases, all the same architecture, but very unique use cases. In some cases, outreaching to people that don't even work at the company, some cases, building out an AI agent specifically for one small task, but can help 10, 20, 30 people optimize their role. But more importantly, empowering your employee to be able to use AI to make their job, and do more with, and enhance and expand their capability, right? So obviously, as a company, and as part of the Constellation family, we're happy to, just as a consultative perspective, if you have any interest in learning more about it, obviously you can reach out to us. Feel free to email us, or you can scan this QR code to, learn more. But, I would say if you're asking yourself one of these five questions, it would be worth a time to set up an appointment with one of our experts like Lee and Elliot. And if you're looking to automate sales activities, a lot of like that example of the user role that I just did with, looking at making sure that you have 24/7 response and that you can get your sales team on the phone, closing more deals, or even expanding that opportunity to your customers as well. Whether it's support, like what we showed with Ideal, being able to really elevate their support capability to a much more fluid, much more human feeling support experience for their customers, instead of the old support chat, which is, quite honestly, everybody knows is very, very lame, and everybody's frustrating to the point where they don't even use it. So we want to advance and try to elevate support into being much more AI powered. Or if you're just looking for ways to improve your team, project management, communication, collaboration, AI does such a great job. And some of the use cases I didn't show today, which is one of my favorite things I do with AI, is I record meetings, and at the end, the AI agent summarizes that meeting and sends it out to the team with next steps and tasks. And it just does that on its own. We don't have to sit there and try to figure out, oh, what did we talk about? What's the next step? And we can share that with the customer even. So again, collaborative tools, AI dominates in that world. And of course, if you want to expand this out to your team and give them empowerment, raia was built specifically for that. In fact, we could train your team and show your team how they could spin up agents to do tasks that are very, very simple. Again, getting that ChatGPT experience, but within a safe environment that is that can be secured and monitored by your management, by your for anybody who wants to oversee that. And then finally, I know that we're all in the vertical software business, and I know that's a very big, earmarked thing in our mind is how do we as companies take our products to the next level? And I'm sure many of you have already dabbled in AI and figured out a way to potentially integrate AI into your products. But, being part of uh, building out vertical software companies myself and helping other vertical software companies understand how AI can be used within their products, happy to answer any questions about that to deliver great to extend this value not just in using it internally but extend it to your customers, because obviously to be competitive in this landscape in the next 4 5 6 years, if we don't have AI as part of our products that we're delivering to our customers, we will fall behind and we will see, obviously a lot of pressure on staying compelling and staying competitive. And that concludes my pitch. I do not have a fancy song to end this, but I'm going to let Scott take over and
Well,
go from
that's
there.
yeah. Look, Rich, this is great. I'm just going to share a couple of examples of the agents which impacted us and at head office, and how we're looking at this. Rich talked about finance. Again, for everybody in finance, we've got an accounting policy manual with 1,000 pages. Rich was able to spin up an agent very, very quickly, which we could train on this 1,000 policies. So you can imagine if you're a new employee at Constellation in finance and you have a question, right now you go onto our site and you're left with 1,000 pages. But when you have an AI agent there who can actually direct you and help you find the right answer, it works very, very well. We have tested this out a bunch, and the feedback coming back is extremely positive. Now, this has expanded. Ali, who also works at head office in tax, has taken these huge PDFs that try to simplify the Income Tax Act, let's say in Canada or the United States or whatever it may be, putting that into the agent, as well as a guide from, let's say, one of the big four, which goes through a whole bunch of Q&A. That's been put in. We've been talking with Farley, for example, about M&A, about getting investment memos and things like that. Imagine, being able to put in and say, when's the last time Constellation acquired a business in healthcare, let's say in Germany, and poof, outcomes outcomes an answer. Here's another one which I'm bet you that a huge percentage of the folks could relate to is, imagine if we had an AI agent that could answer questions on computer share. Many people have frustrations with respect to computer share, especially people at computer share, not necessarily knowing the ins and outs of Constellation. Imagine if we could put an agent together with all of the common Q&A that we get on computer share, putting that into our own agent and being able to direct employees on that. Like, that's just, again, to me, that is just like low hanging fruit on how you can leverage AI agents. And again, one of the things actually we're not that good at Constellation is disseminating information down several layers into the organization. Again, another good example, best practices. What's a maintenance ratio, what's a PS ratio, whatever it may be. Imagine, again, if you'd say, look, I just brought in this acquisition. Yes, we're going to go through our in-person training. That's still going to be part of it. But here's an AI agent that's going to help you get an understanding that you can kind of learn on your own on best practices within Constellation or Valaris or whatever it may be. You're still going to have your training, your summit in 2 weeks or whatever it may be. But to have that agent there with them at the beginning and then there with them after the fact as well, like, it is just, again, to me, it is just low hanging fruit. And it'd be one thing if this stuff took long time to work up. It doesn't. It actually doesn't take that long. And Rich has a licensing model that works for Constellation. A lot of these other models out there are based on headcount, on how many people access it. That's not the license model that Rich uses. It's more based on an agent basis. So it's a model that actually works very well within Constellation. So again, as Rich had said, I would, at a minimum, I would encourage Rich, because again, every time I talk to Rich, he starts to come back at me with other use cases. He's, again, a good example here is he said, well, what if you're working on an acquisition and you have their accounting policies? Could you actually throw those accounting policies into the AI agent, have it cross compare against CSI, and come back with the differences? Rich, who's not even an accountant, suggested that to me. And it's like that's a great idea in terms of, and that's just, again, one example. So, with both Paul and Rich, reach out to them because they're going to share stuff with you. Again, I mentioned every time I email Paul, he comes back with 25% more that I never even thought of. that's the same thing with Rich, is they'll come back with you with stuff you've never even thought of before. So definitely, reach out to these guys to get their perspective on how some of this stuff can help you. So now we're going to go back to our songs here, to have a little bit of fun, and then we're going to go into Q&A. So we're going to do Q&A. So let me just share my screen again. And what I'm going to start with here is I'm going to start with how the song was created. So again, how did a technical accountant with pretty much zero music skill create two, I'd like to say, fairly decent songs? I think those songs are actually pretty good. Well, what it starts with is you start with Copilot, and I'm using Constellation Software here now as an example to say, could you please write a song about the software company Constellation Software Inc.? And what it does, again, it's looking to the internet now, and it puts together, verse one, verse two, the chorus, blah, 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 on Constellation Software. So now what I'm going to do is cut or copy all of those lyrics that it put together, and I'm going to go into one of these song generators and saying, okay, I have lyrics, and dumping the lyrics directly into the model. And then what I'm going to do is pick the name. I'm going to just call it Constellation Software to keep it simple. You can actually pick the voice that you want as well, and you're done. All you have to do is hit render there at the bottom, and it's going to put together a song. And again, you can pick genres and all that other sort of stuff. So what I'm going to show once we're done, I'm going to take us out with a song about Constellation Software. And for all of my friends in Europe, and I've got lots of them, for all the friends in Europe, we're going European Dance Club. I figured I got to pick something like a little bit out there. We went a little bit traditional with Rich, a little bit traditional with Paul. Said, you know what? For Constellation, let's go a little bit further out there in terms of genres. So it'll be European Dance Club. But before we get there, I'm going to open it up for questions. We've been getting questions coming through. So I'm actually just going to stop sharing my screen for a second. And I'm going to go into the Q&A box. And let's just see here. So we got a bunch in the Q&A box. So Rich, I think the first one is for you. It says, how does raia compare with Alexandria? I don't know if you know what Alexandria is or not, but that was one of the questions that had come through.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw a few different questions, and I think I could I'll just answer that because I saw a few other questions around
Yeah, go ahead.
How does it compare with this? How does it compare with that? I think the best way to kind of outline different ways to look at AI, kind of as I mentioned earlier, is for example, another person asked, how is it different from intercom or something like that? So I think there's three things you have to kind of look at. And honestly, and I didn't make this clear in the beginning of my presentation, you're probably gonna have to go down all three paths. It's not like we're not going to use ChatGPT, or we're not going to use some add-on that Microsoft adds to their products for writing code or for expanding to PowerPoint or whatever it might be. And of course, you're going to use AI agents. So they're all three different tools for different jobs, right? Not everything is a nail, and not everything being sold as a hammer. So when you kind of take the first approach, which is what we always do, is like, what's the use case that you're trying to really, what's the use case you're trying to solve, right? So if you're just saying, I need something to quickly, I can toggle over that can write up emails real quick, and then I can, or draft or summarize a document or do something very, very, very quick, you could certainly build an AI agent that does that, but you could also toggle through ChatGPT. But then if you say, well, actually, the stuff that I'm putting in here, I don't want to share and be trained on because it breaks policy, well, then you can't use ChatGPT anymore. You could still use an AI agent because it falls under a completely different thing where it's not trained on that data and it's private. But certainly that's one level of caution that obviously Paul mentioned, which is whatever tool you're using, understand that tool is most likely, unless they say you tell otherwise, they're probably going to use whatever you're putting in there for training. And it may not be a concern if it's just something non-consequential, but it might be a concern if you're putting, for example, if you're putting documents on an M&A deal that we're doing, and that you feel like, oh, that those documents are under an NDA because they might have finances. Well, then probably not a smart thing to put it into ChatGPT and ask it to analyze the P&L of a company, right? So these are things you just have to be cautious of. As far as like I don't know what, I'm not really familiar with the Alexandria, but I guess I'm guessing it's probably I don't really know too much about it. I guess it says sentiment analysis. So my guess is that just by a cursory overview, it's basically looking at information or text and telling you whether that text of that person is angry or sad. Most models do a very good job of this, even OpenAI model, which is what we use. So just to be clear, ChatGPT is driven by an engine, models that are built by OpenAI. We are an enterprise license to that, which ensures encryption, security, SOC compliance, and all that. But it means that your stuff is not shared or not used to train the model. It's like its own firewall. But that model in itself is very good at image creation, text creation, anything around generative AI, including sentiment. So in case, for example, I mentioned this earlier in my sales presentation, but when we look at a conversation, we can score it based on sentiment. So a lot of these models pretty much do everything. There are submodels, people that kind of focus on certain things, like you've heard of 11 Labs, which focuses on creating voice. Suno, which is creating music, or maybe Alexander does some sentiment stuff. But overall, the short answer is AI agents are the ones that where you're going to really want to integrate into your business and be the go-between, right? Everything else to me, honestly, is either a tool or a part of that ecosystem that allows those AI agents to perform at a high capacity. Yeah.
Here's one for you, Paul. You talked a little bit about ethical concerns. How do you think, how do you think AI is going to evolve over the next 5 to 10 years? And how do you think we should be thinking about ethical concerns in terms of like privacy of our data and all that sort of stuff? What do you see? How do you think that's going to evolve over the next few years?
One of the things I've learned in the past 3 years is that kind of predicting even the next 2 years, it's quite difficult, and kind of trying to come up with scenarios of what will happen and how this technology will evolve. It's quite difficult and quite inaccurate. However, I do think that this technology, having this capability to become like a general purpose technology, will be embedded in our lives and kind of in our workflows quite meaningfully. And we will have quite often ethical and quite important considerations. Some of the things to consider when it comes to data privacy, again, coming back to my initial recommendations, make sure that you always know where you're putting your data into. You read the fine print, you make sure that wherever you input your data, it's safe and won't be shared with anyone else, or there aren't risks of losing your data. On the ethical side, one of the interesting things to consider is the biases of these models. Recently, there has been an interesting study between the OpenAI model, which is obviously built and trained in US, and the Mistral model, which is built and trained in the European Union. And this research lab did an analysis to see how these models answer, or what is their opinion in regards to different things which are culturally specific to Europe and US. And as you can expect, the OpenAI model was quite biased for the kind of the way of thinking from US, and the Mistral model from Europe was kind of biased towards the European Union and kind of that way of thinking. So I think as we go further, there is, as a society, we will have to face this challenge of how do we use these models globally when they are being trained and biased kind of in a specific region. And a lot of people think that these biases come from the training data, but actually it's kind of human-induced in the alignment phase of the model. And one last thing on this topic, we're seeing now startups using AI to build romantic companions, or using AI to build a digital avatar of someone, and when he or she passes away, you can interact with it. So some really scary things, which I think have huge implications in terms of ethical psychology and so on. And I really think that we as a society need to figure these things out as this technology evolves.
One follow-up question for you. We're getting a few questions on security concerns in terms of using ChatGPT, Emma, Copilot, all that other sort of stuff. I know at head office, for example, we actually have a license for Copilot. Maybe just talk a little bit about, one of I think your opening slides was you can only share your data once, because once it's out for good. What are some of the issues, maybe, let's say, or security ring fences you have in order to try and limit down the security issues associated with some of these public models?
Yeah, I think using Microsoft's Copilot is a bit like using SharePoint. So when you put something in SharePoint, your data is at Microsoft. It's in their data centers. And Microsoft offers quite similar privacy and kind of security promises with Microsoft Copilot as it does with some other cloud services that they have, like SharePoint and so on. So I think using Microsoft Copilot is one of the safest alternatives for out-of-the-box solutions. If you have super highly sensitive data that cannot go to someone else's cloud, I think a really good approach is to look for a private deployment for one of these LLMs. Obviously, that's going to be more expensive, but in case you're using like government data or some healthcare data which cannot be shared with an external cloud provider, take a look at private deployments. They are available. Even the big players are offering them, but at a higher cost. And when it comes to ChatGPT, it's a bit weird. Normally, kind of the phrase is, if you're not paying for the product, you're the product.
Yeah.
What's weird with ChatGPT is that even if you pay for the product, like if you buy the premium package, the plus package, the plus license, they state that they can still use your data for retraining. So you are the product and you still pay for the product. However, if you use ChatGPT Teams or Enterprise, for those, they have clear promises and statements that they won't use your data for retraining or anything else. So it's a bit weird with ChatGPT. Make sure that you read the fine print. Again, Microsoft, I would trust it a bit more. Yeah, and in general, my recommendation is avoid sharing sensitive information in these systems unless you're super sure of the security levels you're getting. So in the examples I shared with kind of the leadership coach, I was anonymizing the person. I wasn't giving the person name. I would say, let's call him John or things like that. So you can, yeah.
Now, Rich, here's a question for you. I know we've had these conversations. You know, I created a logo, created a song. There's been questions coming up about using these models to program. Maybe just give some perspective on any copyright issues. You know, this is another area that is emerging. I don't think there's any black and white answers at this point, but maybe just give some perspective of copyright, whether you're potentially using AI for programming, whether you're using it to generate logos, generate songs, generate anything. Should people be concerned about and again, you got people from all over the world who are listening, so this is probably a jurisdiction by jurisdiction issue. So sure, we're not going to be able to give some definitive answer, but maybe just talk a little bit about copyright.
Yeah, so the best way to kind of describe where we are today when it comes to copyright is there's really two issues, right, that people are trying to evaluate and try to understand if it does actually violate, or at least the principles of what copyright is, right? You have what's called training, which is where companies like OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, they go out to the internet and they grab a bunch of information, of which a lot of it is copyrighted, and they train their model on that. Much like how a human, if I read a Hemingway book, I'm kind of training my brain. So if I go out and write a book and you can see kind of I was influenced from Ernest Hemingway, is that copyright infringement? And so the AI companies are making the argument, well, I'm just training on this data. I'm not selling or turning around and copying it. I'm just training on it. So that's one piece of legislation that's yet to drop, which is, what does it mean to train on AI? Now, OpenAI has kind of taken the leadership role in going out and signing licensing deals with a lot of businesses that they are getting information from, like newspaper companies, Reddit, you know, obviously those are you know, GitHub and all these other components where they're getting a lot of this information. So they are kind of taking this kind of proactive approach. The other part of AI, which is probably where it's more relevant, is inference. So inference is just really a fancy term of saying what the AI is actually giving you. What is it actually delivering you? Like, AKA the logo that you generated, the songs you generated. So it was trained on millions and millions of songs to create those beautiful songs that you did for us. But somebody could say, hey, man, that Rich song, you know, sounded exactly like the country song I wrote 3 months ago. And you could probably get a letter in the mail saying, hey, man, you that sounds too much like my song. And you don't even know it. You're just kind of playing around. Now, obviously, that would only happen if you try to turn around and sell it or kind of put it to commercial use. But yes, there is a non-zero chance that AI could magically produce something that somebody could argue, oh, well, that's already pre-existing work. Now, a lot of these companies, and to some degree they're a black box, have taken extraordinary, or they claim to have taken extraordinary leaps in protecting from that. So, for example, a great use case would be if you go on ChatGPT right now and say, generate an image of Michael Jordan. It won't do it. It just won't. It'll or give me the Nike, put the Nike logo on this. It won't do it. So they are trying to kind of cut it off at the pass but companies like Twitter, or XAI for that matter, doesn't care. They'll do it all day long. So and that's more of a free speech thing. He said his point of view is, hey, if you want an image of somebody, even though they're famous, I'll do it. I don't care, because it's art, right? So I do think it comes down to, and one of the best questions I saw on the thread today was, if I use AI to generate code, and then I put that code into my product, and then obviously that's going to become commercially viable, I'm going to sell that product. That is a very interesting, unique case, which I do think it probably deserves a double click. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know, but I can tell you that's probably right where we are today. That's a great question that we're not sure. The answer is like, well, maybe it is, but not really. It's not, like, because the AI generated it, but maybe there's a line of code in there that came from software that was written by Google and is copyrighted, but who's going to, there's no way to track that back. So another great analogy I would use is, AI is once it's trained, and once that basically takes all that information and creates that kind of obtuse vector database, there's no real way to understand where it came from. It's almost like it's like breaking a piece of glass and trying to put it back together. So even if there was a law that came out, which is where it comes to education and understanding how you would even enforce this, and somebody claimed that that piece of code came from Google, would be impossible to prove. However, if your song sounds like another song, then it would fall under the normal copyright world. Whether it came from AI or not, you would be subject to the existing law. So I would defer to that. Like, if whatever you're producing you believe is going to violate the current law, well, then you should probably go and make sure it doesn't, right? Do a search, or make sure that, if you create a logo off AI and it looks like the Nike swoosh, and you put it out there and say, oh, well, the AI produced it. Well, yeah, it doesn't matter who produced it. Your marketing team could have produced it. It's still, I would always defer back to the current law, but it's still early days. I mean, who knows what's going to happen?
Agreed. Paul, I'm going to pass this one over to you. We talked a little bit, and I've asked you a similar question to this. Is, you have people who are listening saying, okay, what should I do next? What AI course, or how do I get up the curve on AI? Do I go on YouTube? Because what I've found is that the quality of what we're getting is not great. I've asked people to come in and present on AI, and it just hasn't been what I expected until I watched that masterclass. So what your perspective in terms of, how would you approach AI in terms of trying to supplement your skill set? Or, because again, you've got people on the line that are, let's say, programmers, they might be in marketing, might be in finance, whatever it may be. How would you suggest they get up the curve on AI in terms of next steps?
Yeah, I think it varies a bit based on your role. If you don't have a technical background and you just want to get up to speed to see how you can integrate this into your process, into your work, I think the best way to get a sense of what this can and cannot do is to just start using it. And like, I have kind of two suggestions for this. Try a wide enough set of problems or prompts, and see how it performs on those. You're going to see that on some it performs quite well, on some it doesn't work that well. And kind of the second recommendation is, if something doesn't work as you expect, or doesn't work at all, try again in 6 months. There are so many examples that 6 months ago were not working. These models were not capable of answering those. And now they perform quite well on those. So I think that's a kind of starting point. And just give it a try, see what you're getting back, and spend time with it. I think in the masterclass that Scott, that you were referring, one of the advices there was spend at least 10 hours with these tools. So prompt try to get answers 10 hours. That's kind of enough time for you to have a sense of what these tools can and cannot do. The masterclass that you recommended, I think it's a great piece of content, especially for non-technical and for kind of those which are just getting started and want to get a sense of what this is. And indeed, it's quite hard to disseminate. There is a lot of below average content on AI and kind of a lot of consultants which are trying to kind of sell you a lot of things on related to AI. Uh, Again, the prompting guide, kind of the guides from the big companies are a good starting point. They're free and you can easily check if it's not to your standard, at least you didn't pay anything for it. And Claude has some guides. OpenAI has some guides on this as well. Those would be some good starting points as well. On YouTube, it can be a bit hit or miss. There are some great pieces of content like the Three Blue. I'm going to look for the channel. There is a really good channel which kind of explains how all of this works. Maybe, Scott, we can send at one point a set of a curated list of resources, like free resources that people can access. I don't have them all top of my head, but I think that could be a really good.
Well, I love the prompting guide. I love the prompting guide that you shared, Paul, because I think you think to yourself, "Oh man, I've got AI Copilot. Man, this is cool." But if you don't know how to speak to the Copilot and tell it what to do, it's not going to be anywhere close to as effective as if you have a prompting guide beside you. Because in that prompting guide, there's a whole list of, depending on your role, will drive how you plan on interacting and how you prompt that Copilot in order to get good answers. Would that be fair?
Yep. And even like in some cases, there are some studies which show that if you prompt it by saying, "My job depends on the quality of this answer." So LLMs are really, really weird in how they work. Sometimes, like just by adding in your prompt the fact that "my job depends on this" leads to slightly better results. So we're still in this process of trying to understand how these models actually work and how we can optimize them. My expectation is that soon, currently these tools are quite raw. Soon they will transform into either agents or products that are going to be guardrailed and are going to be optimized for you. At the moment, it's a lot of trial and error. You try different prompts, but it's kind of a raw way of interacting with these models. But yeah, indeed, the YouTube channel, thank you, Alex, 3 Blue 1 Brown. It's a great YouTube channel, especially if you're interested kind of in the technicalities of how these systems works. And they have great content on other topics as well, mathematics and so on. Especially for the engineers out there, I highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah, we'll have to. I think that's a great idea, Paul. What I will do is we'll put together these resources and I will get them up on the ACC site. So we're going to have a copy of the recording up there on the ACC site, and we'll also put a list of good resources as well as contact information for everybody. So I'm going to cut it off there. We're already 30 minutes over. Again, I knew we wouldn't be able to get through this, but again, I hope people have gotten a lot out of this. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take us out. Two things actually I'm going to do. So I'm going to share my screen first. I'm going to share the contact information. So again, if we go back to the objectives, getting to know Rich and getting to know Paul, very, very important in my mind. Hopefully these are global experts on AI that we're lucky enough, frankly, to have within Constellation. And I would highly recommend you reach out to both of them and have a chat. And I will take us out on a song about Constellation, taking out a song on Constellation software, European Dance Club version. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope everybody had a good session. And we'll go out on European Dance Club. And like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out to the experts. But thanks to everybody for joining, and enjoy this final song about Constellation.
Innovation at the core, they lead the way. With passion and drive, they seize the day. Global impact, a legacy so bright. Constellation software shining through the night. Constellation lighting up the sky. With software solutions, they reach so high. Empowering businesses, making dreams come true. Constellation software, we're singing for you. Constellation lighting up the sky. With software solutions, they reach so high. Empowering businesses, making dreams come true. Constellation software, we're singing for you. Hey!
All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed it. Thanks again for joining. And again, reach out to Paul and Rich. And again, enjoy the rest of your day. But thanks everybody for joining the session today.
Thank you, Scott, for putting this together.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it, buddy.